Where are we in terms of the AI narrative in your view, and what's the reality?
Well, I think investors have to ask a question right now. What am I getting into when I invest in Microsoft, Google, and Amazon? So, UBS estimates that 27% of Google Cloud's revenue this year will be OpenAI and Anthropic, increasing to over 48% next year. That is a remarkable amount of money. It's going to be over $124 billion next year. Everyone is buying into these stocks because they believe all of that capex is going towards diverse and spread out AI demand, when in fact what it's actually doing is helping create infrastructure for two unprofitable, unsustainable companies.
So the other one would be Anthropic.
Yes.
You argue. So give us more data, because you have you're citing Microsoft, but what about AWS?
Well, that was what
AI circular financing and capital expenditure worries. AI circular financing, remember that term, AI circular financing and capital expenditures, building stuff with money, using a lot of money to build stuff. But more importantly, AI circular financing. I'm going to circle back to that in a minute.
I was saying. So Barclays actually says that this year 13% of AWS revenue will be both OpenAI and Anthropic, and next year will be 18%. AWS much bigger business than Google Cloud. Now, just to be clear, when I was saying that 27% this year and 48% next year for Google Cloud, I meant both Anthropic and OpenAI.
Okay.
Most people don't know that OpenAI is a large customer of Google Cloud. It's not a well-known fact, but this was actually mentioned by UBS's Stephen Ju.
So where would those companies be right now?
So Anthropic, the AI company, is a huge customer of Google Cloud. I'm going to bring all this home here in a second. Hold on. So you'll notice he hasn't mentioned anything about SpaceX and Grok, the AI over there. Now you got to wrap your head around this. Anthropic, huge AI company, right? Doesn't have its own stuff. It's a customer of Google Cloud. Well, you know what Google did with SpaceX? They bought 5% of it. So SpaceX is owned 5% of it by Google. So how does this make sense? Listen to me very carefully. Anthropic, an AI company that supposedly is building data centers, is a huge customer of Google Cloud, so that you can access Anthropic, right? So that means that Google Cloud's on top. Yet they buy 5% of SpaceX and then sign an agreement to spend up to $3 billion. I think it is a year. It's almost $1 billion a month, so it's more than that. I think it's $30 billion. Google signs a contract to use SpaceX's data center capability, what Google's supposed to have in the first place, up to $30 billion a year. And they can end that within 90 days. Just write them a letter and say, hey, we're either side, 90 days. So why would they do that? Why would Google Cloud need data center capability from SpaceX? Makes very little sense, except for one thing. Boosting with circular financing, remember we talked about that? Circular financing. Boosting SpaceX's income by $1 billion a month. For what purpose? Well, they're about to have their earnings next week on Tuesday. These earnings won't be current. They'll be for March, April, May, or January, February, March, April, May, June, before they even IPO'd. So it's up to $30 billion a year, but it doesn't say, maximum $1 billion a month. So what they could have done with a $30 billion a year contract, and that's up to $30 billion. That says Google won't spend more than 30. It'll be up to. So they could give them $1. They could give SpaceX $1 in revenue. But they could have given them $5 billion for 3 months, for a total of $15 billion on the upcoming earnings report. And then for the last 90 days, they haven't given them anything. We don't know. We won't know for 90 days what they did over the last 90 days. So this upcoming earnings report could show billions and billions of dollars in revenue. And it all came from Google to buy data center capacity from SpaceX when Google Cloud already has the data center capacity in the first place, because Anthropic buys it from Google. Do you see where I'm going here? It's called circular financing and cooking the books. Okay? And why would they do this? Because Google owns 5% of SpaceX and they don't want to see the stock dive, so they set up this whole mess Okay, so that the very first earnings report where everybody is expecting a negative earnings per share suddenly sees maybe 10 cents a share. Big surprise. The stock rallies, goes to 400 on old data that doesn't really apply because they said, oh, we're not going to spend any more money this year. But they could do it April, May, June for this earnings report, and then July, August, September for the next report, and the next report happens to coincide with about the time they end all the unlock-up periods of all the stock. So the unlock period for the stock, which happens from August through Christmas, could be heavily bolstered by bogus, circular financing from Google, which has a 5% stake in SPCX. This is all, I don't even know how it's legal, okay? I don't know how it's legal. This could be why Musk keeps warning the people shorting the stock, you'll be in for a rude surprise, because they've done this bogus circular financing with Google for the purpose of manipulating the stock. That's what it looks like to me.
October 24th, 1929, 10 a.m. No one yet suspects that today will become a nightmare for millions. In the next 6 hours, America will lose $14 billion, more than the entire country spent on World War I. Telephone lines will fail. Communication with the exchange will be cut off. Traders will throw themselves out of skyscraper windows. By evening, 5 million Americans will wake up in a different reality. But few know exactly how this day began. What events triggered the mechanism of catastrophe? What was happening on the exchange minute by minute? And why no one could stop the collapse that changed the world forever? This is the story of the most terrible day in the history of the American economy. Just a day earlier, on October 23rd, America was at the very peak of euphoria. In 1929, the country lived in an illusion of eternal growth. Stocks had been rising for 8 years straight. The Dow Jones Stock Index reached a historic maximum, 381 points, a record that wouldn't be beaten for the next quarter century. But most importantly, anyone could now become an investor. Every taxi driver, every waiter, every clerk. 10 million Americans own stocks, 1 in every 12 residents of the country. You could buy stocks on credit, put down $10, control 100. Banks encouraged this, brokers persuaded, newspapers promised the market will never fall again. A clerk from Chicago, John Thompson, sits at his kitchen table calculating future profits. He invested $500 of his own money and borrowed another $4,500 from the bank. His General Electric stocks grew by 40% in 3 months. A couple more years and he'll buy his own house. In Ohio, a teacher named Miller mortgaged his house and invested $8,000 in Radio Corporation stocks. In 6 months, they doubled. He already sees himself retired, living on dividends. There were millions like this, ordinary Americans who believed in eternal growth. This was called progress, democratization of capital, the American dream. And only the smartest suspected this was a powder keg.
Oh, but that can't happen again because they put in safeguards. Remember, this was people that were buying stock, on margin with loans, but they were buying it, waiting for it to go up. We're in a completely different situation sitting here today. We have people that are shorting stock. They're betting it will go down. People that short stock aren't everyday average people with average incomes. People that short stock have to have the wherewithal to be able to financially support shorting a stock because their losses, if you buy a stock for $10 and it goes to zero, you lost $10 a share. If you short a stock that's at $100 and you're expecting it to go to 10 and it goes to 210, guess what happened? What if it goes to 1,000? What if it goes to 10,000 a share? You owe all of that money. It's infinite. The losses are infinite. And the losses aren't hitting the average person on the street. They're hitting some of the most well-to-do, wealthiest, or well-off people in America. The people that are spending money and hiring people. Okay? It's complete 180 of the first Great Depression. And what if the plan is to destroy the American economy, to get people off the dollar. What if that's the plan?
It won't matter in 2036.